Um, okay, so since we are done with the, administration part, we'll be moving on to the programming. Again, are we completely done with the administration part? No. There are, many other things, but we just try to cover the most common things that anybody should know. There might be other things that you might encounter, which we can read through the documentation and, get them up. But whatever topics that we have covered should be helpful enough for you to perform day-to-day activities. At least, like I said, the goal of training is not to give you or tell you everything that so that you'll be able to just build complex enterprise level applications. But the goal is to make you survive for first few days in the company, because nothing can replace the real-time experience. Nothing can replace the hands-on experience. And I'm relying on you guys to get as much as hands-on experience by doing some exercises, working on trailheads, or, trying to build some apps of your own. So I'm relying on you to be able to get that hands-on experience. Okay. Now, coming to Apex. Apex is nothing but it's the proprietary programming language of Salesforce. Okay, so Salesforce uses something called Apex coding, and that language Apex is a proprietary language of Salesforce. Now, Apex is very, very similar to Java or C#. If you have done any Java programming or C# programming before, Apex would seem very, very similar. Apex is not case sensitive. It's not case sensitive. You can just write small a, capital A, whatever it is, and it just treats it the same. It's not case sensitive. And, it follows all the principles of the object-oriented programming. There are some, from the object-oriented wise, there are no differences. It just follows. It is object-oriented programming, so it follows all the principles of object-oriented programming. Now, just like, if you do not have knowledge of C# or anything, it's fine too. I'm like that, I just say for the sake of saying it that it follows object-oriented principles, or it is similar to C# or Java. Just for the sake of documentation, I say, but I really do not know how C# or Java coding is written, because I've never even seen one, or I've never done any coding there. Okay. Now, one good thing with Apex, not with Apex. See, Apex is a programming language. We can basically do pretty much anything in Apex. But with respect to Salesforce programming in general, with respect to Salesforce programming, I think one good thing is, because it's a cloud platform, there are certain limitations. Now when I say limitations, we have governor limits, right? It's not a limitation, but governor limits keep you in check. Governor limits allow you to write programming within certain boundaries. Okay. And you see, Salesforce, because it's cloud computing platform, there are certain things that you can do, and there are certain things that you don't want to do in Salesforce. Okay. So that's why most of the use cases, whatever we do, are already done by so many people. Most of the use cases that we encounter, or most of the cases that we come across, are already done by so many people, and there is so much documentation about it. So because it's like a boxed platform. So you do certain things, and you do certain things in a certain way. So that means if you learn few techniques, hey, give me 1 second. Yeah. If you learn few techniques on how to do those are the same techniques that you will apply to do anything. it's not like, I mean, I heard from what Java or .NET developer says.
Buttons are loud. Enjoy your stay.
In one way, they say, that's a good thing, like the Java or .NET is a good thing in one way, because, they are not limited by the platform and they can do unlimited type of coding. They can do lots of crazy things in there. Whereas in Apex, I think it's limited by the platform. Again, I don't know what cannot be done or anything like that. But there is so much learning curve with respect to other languages, but I don't think with respect to Apex there is so much learning curve. The learning curve is short because, you're not, I know it's object-oriented programming and all, but from the coding, whatever I have seen, not all, like there are not many people or there are not many applications that follow the proper object-oriented programming concepts. Okay, so there are certain basic concepts like writing a trigger, writing an Apex class, writing a bad job, like writing a controller for a Lightning component or writing a controller for a Visual Force page. So there are certain things that can be done, and if we know, if we touch those areas, we can use the same knowledge in multiple places or multiple scenarios to be able to do that. Because, I mean, like I said, it's a box platform. There are only so many things that you can do. And if we learn some of those scenarios, we'll be applying the same scenarios again and again. Okay? So things that we want to learn in, the things that we would probably be covering would be triggers, Apex classes, triggers, Apex classes, test classes, variables, collections, SOQL, of course, DML, and then we will probably cover batch Apex, HTTP callout, and then I think we'll cover all, these are all the pieces that we would cover. So triggers, Apex classes, test classes, variables, collections, spelling, variables. Collections, SOQL, DML. So, I mean, for me, when I started, right, I started programming only like 3-4 years ago. So when I started programming, I used to think, oh man, this is such a huge topic. How would I able to ever write code and all that stuff? But now, after 3 to 4 years of coding, I feel like if you know these 4 things, that's it. Like if you know those 4 things, variables, collections, SOQL, I mean, variables is pretty easy. I would say data types. I mean, not variables, but I'll just say data types. You define variables for the. So if you know those 4 things properly, it's just the repetition of those 4 things again and again and again in various ways to be able to achieve whatever we want. So if we know those 4 things, I think we should be pretty good. Okay. So now, first of all, let's talk about, before even writing the code and all those things, let's just talk about where do we write the code? Like, where in Salesforce we will write the code. So here is where we write the code. Like, if you go to, like, here, if you click on this, the wrench icon. You can click Developer Console. It would open like this, okay? Or you can click this, click Control button and Developer Console. If you click Control button and Developer Console, it opens in different tab. I like this view, like rather than this view. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I just, for some reason, I want to keep it as another tab. So that's why I use Control and Developer Console. So it is created as a separate tab rather than a pop-up. Okay. So this is the Developer Console where, I mean, of course, the name itself is Developer Console. So where developers can do a lot of stuff here. Okay. If you want to write code, like you see, for example, file, new, what do you want to write? Do you want to write an Apex class, an Apex trigger? Do you want to build a Lightning component, a Lightning interface? Like, you know, everything is basically here. Okay, so you want to create you want to create a class, you know, like all those things are here. If you want to execute some code, you can execute from here. If you want to debug some stuff, you can debug from here. And you can also write queries from here, like, you know, like this. You can just query and the query results will obtain here. So this is the query editor. Like, I mean, you will not be able to export it, but, you know, as a developer, we would be, you know, we would want to write queries, debug something, check what's going on and all that, right? So we have Workbench or data loader or reports to be able to export the data. I mean, you can write queries there too, but here, like, you know, when you're working on a program, if you want to do something, you can just do that, okay? Now, this is Developer Console. This is inbuilt within every org, you know, like whether a sandbox or anything. This is the Developer Console. Even production has Developer Console. You will be able to write queries there. You will be able to debug some stuff, but you will not be able to. This will be disabled because in production you cannot write code. Even if you want to write, Salesforce will not allow you to write code in production. Whereas in sandboxes, yeah, you can write code, or can update code or anything. In production, you will not be able to write code or you will not be able to update the code. Okay, but you will be able to debug by, you know, writing queries and stuff. You will be able to debug here in production too, because production also has a Developer Console. Now, so let's say you want to write some code, right? Let's say I just say I'm not actually writing it. But let's say you want to write. See, you can write here. Some people, you know, like writing the code here. So, I mean, some people write like writing the code in the Dev Console. I'm not one of them. I don't like writing the code in Dev Console at all. So I like using some tools. So we have some tools like Eclipse. I don't know if I have it on this machine. Let me just see if I have it. Yeah, you know, some people want to write code here. Like I've seen developers in my team, they love coding in the Dev Console. I'm not one of them. But again, Salesforce also supports some of the desktop tools which you can use to write code. For example, Eclipse and VS Code. So Eclipse used to be, I mean, in Eclipse, there is a tool called Eclipse, which is a famous tool for writing code, and, you know, it's an IDE, it's an integrated development environment. So Eclipse even now it has a plugin called as Force.com IDE plugin. Okay, so within Eclipse we can use Force.com IDE plugin, to be able to write code and connect it to the sandbox. But Salesforce stopped supporting Eclipse, and from October of this year, Eclipse is completely, Salesforce stopped supporting releasing new versions. Like they stopped releasing new versions of Force.com IDE plugin. Like that's the plugin that you install within Eclipse to be able to write Salesforce code. They stopped giving the upgrades for it, and they said from October they are not going to support that at all. And they said VS Code is their new tool choice. VS Code is the new tool choice. So that's why companies are moving to VS Code to be able to companies have just started moving to using VS Code as the development environment. Same like us, the place where I'm working for, we also used to use Eclipse, but now one of my team member is working or doing research on how we can use VS Code, just like we used to use Eclipse. VS Code is a popular one, most popular one. It's one of the most modern IDE, and it's very popular. This is the IDE that's very popular. So this is the tool whatever I'm talking about. This is the VS Code tool. Again, I haven't used VS Code at all. I did some practice, but I haven't really used at an enterprise level. But that's good. You know what? Since anyway we as a company, the place where I'm working, we are also trying to move to VS Code. We'll just learn the latest and greatest one, because they say this is the future. Salesforce documentation clearly said VS Code is the future, and they are going to support everything on VS Code. And I'm sure, because they said that, they might be coming up with plugins or any enhancements to support VS Code, Visual Studio Code, as the integrated development environment. So let's just learn that. Like I said, I do not know. I haven't used it. I used to use Eclipse. I haven't used VS Code at all. But again, I don't think it's that hard. There is documentation and everything that we can use. But I will learn a little bit before. Maybe I think today I'm going to spend some time in getting the VS Code used and everything. And I'll let you guys know about the VS Code, and we'll write code only in VS Code. Now, what are these integrated development environment tools? Why do you have to care about them? Why do you have to worry about them? Okay, so these IDEs are nothing but see, this is the VS Code, right? This is nothing but. I just downloaded this tool. Okay, so what happens now? I downloaded this tool, right? I can probably install some plugin, or there must be some extensions that. Let me search for a Salesforce extension. Maybe. Yeah. See, there are, Salesforce extension pack. There are a lot of tools that are available. So, I'm assuming, I don't want to install anything that I don't need, but I'm assuming we will be installing the Salesforce extension pack. So once the Salesforce extension pack is installed, we will get the option probably to be able to enter our username, password, and stuff. I'm assuming, I haven't tried. I want to try it, but I'm assuming once you install it, behind the scenes, this pack will be installed on this VS Code, and it would ask for username and password. I'm just saying. So when you say username and password, what happens? The code metadata and everything, the whole metadata, will automatically be created. A package will be created automatically for us, and it is stored on our local machine, on our desktop. The whole code and everything, whatever that code metadata that you have, will be stored on our local machine in the form of an XML. Okay, it will be stored. Now here, what we can do is, like, like the code, instead of writing here, we will be writing right on this, we'll be writing right here in the tool. And when you hit save, automatically the code will be saved to your org. Like, it is called integrated development environment. The reason being, in this tool, this is a separate desktop tool. In this tool, you have provided the username and password for your instance. So what happens with the moment you are opening the code and the moment you are writing and saving the code, automatically the code saves on your local machine. Like, it would be saved on your desktop computer as in a folder, and it would also be saved in the, it would also be saved in the sandbox. Okay. So what is the advantage of writing in these tools? Okay. Let's say you have some code written. Okay. And everybody, like, 2 or 3 people are working on the same sandbox. Okay. There are all 2 or 3 developers are working on the same sandbox, and you have your code written. So if somebody overwrites your code in sandbox, okay, let's say somebody overwrites your code in sandbox, you always have a local copy of yours, right? Because, the code is also stored on your local machine, like on your desktop. You have a copy in your desktop where you can compare what happened, and, probably talk with the developer and replace it or merge it or do whatever you want. Okay. That's number one. The other thing is, it's more comfortable writing code rather than, rather than doing it here. I think I feel this is way more comfortable writing the code in a separate tool like this for debugging, or even if when you're looking at the code, I think it looks for the visual eye, like, it looks more clear and comfortable when working in a tool like this. Okay. So the third thing is, most important thing is, see, Salesforce. I think yesterday somebody asked about version control tool. So we have version controlling repositories like GitHub, Bitbucket. So, I think SVN. There are so many things that are available, but I've worked on GitHub and Bitbucket, and I think they are the more popular ones, but I might be wrong, but most of the applications that I've seen uses GitHub and Bitbucket. Now, let's say you write this code here, right? And you have to make sure this code moves into version control. Like, this code have to be in Bitbucket or GitHub in version control. So from developer console, there is no way. Salesforce haven't provided us a way to be able to integrate with your version control. Whereas if you have tools like, if you are here, you can maybe install you can probably install tools like this, Tortoise, Git commands, Tortoise HG command, or, you can install something like this. I'm sure there must be some few things for, GitHub, and like, there are some things, tools that support these too. So maybe we can install those tools. And when we install those tools, what happens? Using those tools, we will be within this, we can install some extensions. Using those, we can get, like, we can give our Bitbucket or GitHub credentials, and we will be able to push this code up there. Like, the see, integrated development environment, right? First of all, you can write code. Second thing is, you can save your code. You can connect your code to sandbox, whichever sandbox that you're working on. The other thing is, you can also connect your code, or you can push and pull the code directly from here to your source control systems as well. So that's why, like, that is the major reason why we should be using an IDE rather than, writing the code in a developer console. There is nothing wrong in it, in writing the code in developer console, but, there are some of the features that are not available in dev console. Again, it really depends. If you are working on a small application where you don't have version control, where you don't need to do anything in version control, you work with change sets and stuff, absolutely fine. You can work in dev console without any issues, and you should still be able to get your work done. Okay, but having this, will having this knowledge will help you. So that's why, since we are anyway starting from the beginning, and since VS Code is the new new tool of choice for everybody, and Salesforce is also saying VS Code is the new tool of choice, we will start learning VS Code, and we'll only learn VS Code. Okay, this way we are more current with the market, what's going on. Again, so I haven't learned it yet, but I'm going to spend some time today to get through that. Okay, so that's where. So where do we write code? This is where we write code, like in Dev Console or in tools like that, and save the code. Okay. So second thing, why do we write code? Like, what is the purpose? See, first of all, we have seen so many things, right? We are able to create tables, formula fields, process builders, approval processes, record types, page layouts. Like, there are so many things that we are able to do already. Especially things like process builder are so powerful that you can, perform field updates, you can create records, you can update related records, you can send email alerts. So, we also have validation rules. We have a lot of things. Okay. So we have all those things. But again, why do we again have to write code? Okay. Even though the platform has provided us a lot of tools like validations, process builders, formula fields, and all those business processes that can help us, there are certain things that cannot be solved with them. Those things can only support until a certain extent. Okay, those things, whatever the platform has given out of the box, they are really helpful to build at least a mid-level complex application. Don't get me wrong, they are really powerful. And they are helpful if used correctly, if used wisely. Those are pretty powerful tools that can help you build even a complex application. I wouldn't even say medium level, even a complex application. But there are certain things that those are not possible with those out-of-the-box tools, and hence, we would have to end up writing code. Okay. So that code, in code, the platform gives you more capabilities of performing the business functions in whatever way you want. Okay. So that's the reason, why we would be writing the code. Again, it's scenario based. You won't be writing the code in all the scenarios. It's just scenario based. Depending on whatever the scenario, if we are unable to achieve through the configuration features that are provided out of the box for us for the Salesforce, we would be using these. Okay. Other than okay, so we want to talk about the triggers, classes, classes, data types. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about loops too. Okay. Does anybody have previous coding knowledge in any other language? Even if it's C, C++, or any other programming language?
UI, Angular.
Oh, you guys did UI?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but even in UI, you must have used loops, variables, and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So did you work on Angular 1 or Angular 2?
Angular 2.
Oh, that's good. It's unidirectional binding.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
if you worked on Angular 2, the latest version of Lightning components will be very helpful for you, like the Lightning Web Components. So there are Lightning components and Lightning Web Components. So if you worked on Angular 2, I think Angular 1 is bidirectional, right? Angular 2 is unidirectional binding. So yeah, if you worked on Angular 2, the latest Lightning Web Components will be very, very easy for you.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's good. I mean, I think having knowledge of any programming language would help you, because I feel the thinking part is same. It's just the syntactical part that's different between different languages. And once you get hold of the syntax, I think we should be good. Okay, let's just, I just want to talk about a few things about each of these topics. But, I just want to give you an introduction today. But from tomorrow, we'll actually do the coding. I just want to give you some. Now, what are triggers? Okay, triggers are nothing but it's the logic that's executed when a DML operation is performed on an object. Okay. Now, what is meant by a DML operation? Let me show you what a DML operation. The DML is nothing but data manipulation language. Okay, but I'll just say. So let's say you go here. You click new. Okay. See, now I hit save. See, save is nothing but you inserted a record, right? A new row in opportunity table got created. That's a DML operation. Okay. A new record creation is a DML operation. Now I click edit, change something or do not change something, whatever it is, and then hit save. See, it's a DML operation. I performed an update on the record. Okay. Now I go, I delete this. Okay. So I performed a delete on the record. Like, creating a record is a DML operation. Updating a record is a DML operation. Deleting the record is a DML operation. If I go to recycle bin and undelete a record, that's a DML operation too. So DML stands for data manipulation language. Okay. So the DML operation is nothing but whenever we are inserting a record, updating a record, creating a record, and creating, updating, deleting, and undeleting a record. All these things comes under DML operations. Okay. So trigger is the logic. I mean, the name itself is trigger, right? So trigger is the logic that gets executed when a DML operation is performed on an object. Okay. For example, you see, like this is the syntax of the trigger. Okay. So trigger, sample trigger on asset. Asset is the object before insert. Okay. So when the record is getting inserted on asset object, execute whatever logic that you write here, that should be executed. Okay. So in the same way, you can write trigger something on. So trigger, sample trigger on account before insert. What does this mean? This means, whenever an account record is about to be inserted, perform this logic. If I just say, so this means whenever an account is created or updated, like we will be writing the logic in between these two flower bases. So whenever an account record is created or updated, execute this logic. So see, writing the code is one piece. Like the code have to be executed, right? Like we need to find an execution point for that code. So the execution point, like the execution point for trigger is nothing but the DML operation that we perform. So, or we can just simply say, before delete, trigger, sample trigger on account before delete. So this stands for, we are writing a trigger on account and the DML event is before delete. So this trigger, the logic whatever we write between those two flower braces gets executed whenever we are trying to delete an account. Okay, so triggers are nothing but the entry point for that logic execution is a DML operation. So that's why when you are writing a trigger, you define the object, like you define the Salesforce object which you are writing on. Okay, either it is account, contact, opportunity, session speaker, whatever it is. All these objects support triggers. So that's why whenever you are about to write a trigger, you need to tell the name of the object. Okay, so it should be trigger, whatever the name of the trigger, on session _c, session speaker _c, before event, before insert, before update, before delete, or so you define the event as well. Like you define the event when that have to be fired. So automatically, whatever the logic that you write here, like for example, your logic is whenever you are updating an account. Okay, so whenever you are updating an account, like you need to say, let's just say, if the type is existing customer upgrade, let's just say, whenever you are updating an account, if the type is existing customer upgrade, the lead source should be phone inquiry. I'm just making up a scenario. Okay, so what would you do? So whenever you are updating an account, whenever edit is happening, whenever you are updating an account, automatically, based on the type, if the type is existing customer upgrade, the lead source should be phone inquiry. Okay, so where would you write the code? It'd be trigger, some XYZ trigger. You can name the trigger on opportunity before update. Okay, you will write before update, and in the logic you would say if the type is existing customer upgrade, lead source is equal to this one. So that every time you hit update operation, you click edit and hit save, or you perform an update operation from workbench or data loader, or no matter whatever way it is, every time you perform an update DML operation, that logic automatically gets executed. Okay, so that's about the triggers. We will be seeing examples and stuff. Now, Apex classes. Classes are nothing but, they are the blueprint of creating objects. This is the object-oriented language. Classes are the blueprints of creating objects and stuff. But barring those, if you just take class is a file, class is a file that contains various methods. Okay, class is a file that contains various methods, and each method has logic. You have logic. For example, I can just simply write a simple class here. Okay, I'll just write a class. I'm just writing a sample class. I'm just making up an example. Okay, you see here, this is a whole class file, like, public class sample is a, like, I'm opening a brace here, and this is a file. And these are nothing but methods in it. Like, you have 3 different methods. One is a method that helps you to calculate interest. One is another method that helps you to send email, like you write the logic to send email. One is a method, that helps you to print full name. So a class, again, I'm not going to the actual object-oriented definition, like, a class is a blueprint of creating a method, and, those are all there. You can always read the documentation and stuff for that. But I'm just saying, class is nothing but a set the class contains a set of methods and set of variables called the attributes, okay? So a class contains a set of attributes and set of variables. Now, what we can do is, the calculate interest is gonna give us a separate, like, logic, and send email contains a separate logic, and print full name contains a separate logic. So class is nothing but it contains methods and attributes. Then those methods contain, like, logic, whatever we want. Like, we will write the logic in whatever we want. So this, like, these classes, we will use this logic, okay? We will use this logic, whatever that we write in the method, in whatever form we want. Like, for example, we can call this method from within the trigger. Like, see, writing a class like this, okay, first of all, this is a class, okay? The class contains different methods, and different methods contains logic, okay? That's about an Apex class. Okay, you take any class, it just does these things, nothing extra. So you take any class in this, any Apex class, it always contains those attributes and contains some methods that will contain logic. Now, how will we use those logic? That's a separate thing. Okay, when I say that's a separate thing, a class, right? Class cannot execute itself, right? Like, when would this calculate interest method be called? When would this print full name method be called? That's up to us. For a trigger, if you define a trigger, the trigger gets executed when a DML operation is performed. Automatically, whenever a DML operation is performed, the trigger automatically gets executed. The logic that you write within those 2 flower brackets gets executed automatically. Whereas a class cannot be executed automatically. We need to call these methods. We need to call the class, and we need to call these methods. So where would we do it? One of the way of doing it is, while, you have the trigger here, right? So the trigger gets automatically executed when the trigger automatically gets executed when the DML operation is performed. But now, from the trigger, you want to send an email. Whenever an opportunity record is deleted, whenever an account record, as per this example, whenever an account record is deleted, you want to send an email to the owner of the account, hey, one of your account is deleted. Okay, what would you do? Rather than writing the whole logic here, from within the trigger, you will call this method. Like, you will call, okay, from the class sample, call the send email method. And this send email method will have the logic to actually send the email to the person, whoever you define. So from within this trigger, you will call those classes, or you will call the methods in those classes. Okay? Same way, wherever it is. Like in all the example, let's say you're writing a batch class. That batch class executes when you schedule it. You can schedule the class to say, okay, run this class. Like there are something called as schedule classes. You can just schedule it to say, run this class at 8 p.m. every night or 5 p.m. every evening. Like, you can schedule it. So when you schedule the class gets executed. So the class can be executed either from triggers or by scheduling them or by using them as Lightning component controllers. So we will get to those topics. But for now, just remember, trigger is a piece of code that gets executed whenever a DML operation is performed on the object. Okay? Class is a piece of code that contains methods and attributes which have the ability to, and these methods will contain different logic. Now the methods in these classes will be called either from triggers or they can be scheduled to be able to execute themselves. Okay, that's the class. What is meant by test class? Test class are nothing but, let's say you write Apex code, right? You write you write Apex classes, you write Apex triggers, you can write lot of Apex code. Now, how do you ensure that your code is working correctly? Okay. First of all, you would ensure by testing it yourself. Okay. By just creating some records or by removing some records, you check whether your functionality is working fine or not. But Salesforce as a platform wouldn't just be happy by you doing functional testing. You would have to write something called test class to check the functionality through code. Like you're writing some code and you are writing a bit more code to make sure that your code is working correctly. Only when you have the test classes and when the test classes are passed, that's when you will be able to deploy the code. Otherwise, you will not be able to deploy. In order to deploy the code to production, the overall code coverage have to be at least 75%. Okay, we'll talk about what code coverage and all that is. But without having the code coverage of 75%, you will not be able to deploy it. So that's why test classes are like a real core integral part of it. Okay. See, now data types. Data types are nothing but, you see, I'm referring the integer. Sorry, this is double. It's not decimal. Integer, double, string. Like these are all data types, like integer, double, string, decimal, blob, date time, boolean. There are various data types that are supported. We'll talk about those. So the data types are nothing but, you see, like I'm clearly defining integer p, integer t, double r, integer I is equal to ptr by 100. Print full name, string, like, I'm telling what kind of data it is. First name is going to be a string, right? And last name is also going to be a string. The full name is going to be a combination of first name and last name. So I have to define the variable, like, I have to define the variable, what type of data that it's going to hold. So just like, data types are nothing but, I think you guys already know it. While creating the object, did we not choose the data types? Like this has to be a checkbox, this has to be a date, this has to be date type, depending on the type of data that it's going to hold, right? Same thing. Okay, same thing in Apex 2. Collections are nothing but, string first name is a single variable. Collection, list of strings. If I want to collect, for example, if I want to say, hey, what is the name of this student? It's going to be a string. But if I say, can I get all names of all the students present in this class? It would be a list of strings, because there are multiple strings that are involved. So we'll talk about those collections. That's the collections. Loops are nothing but, I'm sure you must have heard what for loop is. If you have done at least a little bit programming, for loop, for each loop, do, while, those are loops. SOQL, you already know SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language. I have shown you a little bit. When you write a query, select ID, name for whatever it is. Like writing those queries are nothing but SOQL, that's Salesforce Object Query Language. SQL is Structured Query Language, but SOQL is modified form of SQL, which only works for Salesforce. That's why it's Salesforce Object Query Language. It has some limitations. It has things the way how they want you to do and stuff. So that's SOQL we'll learn because querying is such an important piece. DML, data manipulation language. I think we saw already. Like through code, we should be able to insert records, update records, delete records, undelete records. Through code, we should be able to do all those things, and hence DML operation, like the DML language is useful. Batch Apex is nothing but it comes under asynchronous. We'll talk about synchronous and asynchronous as well. So this comes under asynchronous. When you're dealing with huge number of records, Batch Apex is helpful. It's an asynchronous Apex. We'll talk about it too. HTTP callouts are nothing but integration, like where from Salesforce, we are talking to a third-party system outside of Salesforce. making callouts, and then retrieve the data from them or send the data, like whatever. Like interacting with third-party applications comes under HTTP callouts. And then finally, Lightning component controllers. Once these are done, we will build some Lightning component, and we will also see the Lightning component controllers. Okay, Lightning component controllers have to be Apex classes as well. Use the RI enabled keyword and all that. So we'll just see in that when that time comes, what are those Lightning component controllers and stuff. Okay, so these are all the pieces that we have. Like you mentioned, once you know these pieces, once you know where the code is being executed from, how the code is being executed from, it's easy. It's easy means the process is same. You might just be writing different logic every different time, but even those logics, most of the use cases that we always encounter are already written by somebody. Like, somebody might have already used it, somebody might have already written it, and we might probably able to Google it and get that. Okay? So these are all the things that are involved in Apex. So we'll slowly, probably I will start with data types tomorrow, like, data types, collections, loop, SOQL, DML. So first we will do this. Okay, first we'll write data types, collection, loops, SOQL, DML, and then we'll move on to triggers. Okay, that way it's more sequential, or we might start with trigger. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I'll just do some research on VS Code in the meanwhile. Get ready with the VS Code. So we'll install the VS Code first, connect it to our environment, and then start writing the code only in VS Code. Okay, this way we are advanced on the curve. And even in interviews, when you say what kind of IDE you use, if you say, hey, I use VS Code, it will look cool because it's the most new thing. Okay. Any questions, guys? Anybody? All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and we will probably start with one of the topics from here. Okay. Thank you, guys.